Summary: How to Win Friends and Influence People, Dale Carnegie. Book link. Click here. The author wrote this book for the following principal reasons. His many years of experience in conducting courses on effective speaking and human relations made him realize that adults sorely needed training in human relationships and the art of getting along with people. He needed a book on human relationships 20 years earlier. Such a book would have been invaluable to him. Dealing with people is the biggest problem for most people, regardless of their profession or vocation. Research shows that 85% of one's success depends on human relationships. Technical knowledge alone contributes only about 15%. Although the ability to deal with people is the highest priced ability, very few colleges offer courses on human relationships and getting along with people. A survey conducted by the University of Chicago and the YMCA revealed that the prime interest of adults was health, and their second interest was people, how to understand them and get along with them. However, the survey committee needed help finding a practical book. The book aims to fill this need for a practical book on human relationships and people skills. The authors needed to find a thorough, practical book on human relations and interpersonal skills. So, they decided to research and write their own. They researched extensively by reading newspaper articles, books, biographies, and more. They also interviewed successful public figures to discover their techniques. They compiled their findings into a short lecture and course. Over 15 years, they expanded and refined the course based on student feedback and results. The principles and techniques worked like magic to improve relationships and success. The principles in the book are not theories. Many people have tested and applied them with dramatic results, including improved relationships, careers, and lives. The authors aim for the book to help readers develop their potential and ability to handle life's situations. They argue that education and knowledge are only worthwhile with application and action. The authors provide 9 suggestions to get the most out of the book. Most importantly, an intense desire and determination to improve your ability to work with people. Other tips include: read quickly then reread thoroughly, stop often to think how to apply the lessons, mark or highlight helpful passages, and review essential parts again. A key example is a woman who reread insurance contracts for 15 years to gain new insights, even though there was repetition. The authors argue that rereading this book will lead to discoveries and tools. Criminals often do not blame themselves for their actions and instead rationalize their behavior. Examples given include: Two-Gun Crowley, who wrote a letter saying, "Under my coat is a weary heart, but a kind one that would do nobody any harm, despite just killing a police officer." Al Capone, who said, "I have spent the best years of my life giving people the lighter pleasures, helping them have a good time, and all I get is abuse, the existence of a hunted man." Dutch Schultz said in an interview that he was a public benefactor. According to the warden of Sing Sing prison, most criminals rationalize their actions and do not believe they should be imprisoned. John Wanamaker, the department store founder, said, "I learned 30 years ago that it is foolish to scold. I have enough trouble overcoming my limitations without fretting that God has not seen fit to evenly distribute the gift of intelligence." In other words, blaming others for their faults and limitations is useless. It is better to focus on overcoming your own. The critical point is that criticism and blame rarely change others or their behavior. It is best to avoid kicking the beehive and instead take responsibility for your reactions and responses. Here are the key points. Criticism is futile and often makes people defensive and resentful instead of changing their behavior. Praise and rewards are more effective for learning and improvement. The quarrels between Theodore Roosevelt and Taft and the Teapot Dome scandal showed that criticism usually does not make people admit they were wrong. They tend to blame others instead. Lincoln learned from experience to avoid criticism and insults. After nearly dueling with James Shields over an insulting letter, Lincoln never attacked anyone personally again. During the Civil War, Lincoln did not publicly criticize his generals, even when they failed. He said others should not criticize Southerners either, since Northerners would act the same in their situation. When Lee's army was trapped after Gettysburg and vulnerable to capture, Lincoln ordered an immediate attack. However, General Meade called a council of war instead, allowing Lee to escape. Lincoln complained but did not criticize Meade publicly. Privately, he wrote that Meade had made a miserable failure of the opportunity. In general, Lincoln was reluctant to criticize others and preferred to judge them charitably. One of his favorite quotes was, "Judge not, that ye be not judged." Despite many occasions for it, Lincoln indulged in little criticism of individuals. President Lincoln urgently ordered General Meade to attack General Lee's forces. However, Meade delayed and called a council of war instead of attacking as ordered. By the time Meade was ready to attack, Lee had escaped. Lincoln was furious at Meade for missing the opportunity to defeat Lee. Lincoln wrote Meade a scathing letter criticizing him for his failure but ultimately decided not to send it. Lincoln realized that criticizing Meade would only make the situation worse and impair Meade's effectiveness. The story provides several other examples of the dangers of criticism and the wisdom of restraint. Criticism can drive people to extremes, destroy relationships, and inhibit productivity. It is often better to be understanding and forgiving instead of critical. Treating people with compassion and kindness can have a much more positive impact, even when they make mistakes. The story concludes with an example of pilot Bob Hoover's kindness toward a mechanic who caused Hoover's plane to crash land due to negligence. Instead of criticizing the mechanic, Hoover gave him another opportunity to service his plane to help rebuild his confidence. The story also includes the essay Father Forgets as an example of the compassion and forgiveness the story advocates. The essay depicts a father apologizing to his sleeping son for being overly critical at times, recognizing that it is easy for parents to focus on their children's faults and forget everything they do right. So in summary, the key message is that criticism and condemnation are accessible but often counterproductive, while compassion and understanding are more challenging but usually more impactful. It is best to restrain criticism whenever possible and to treat people with kindness and empathy instead. The passage discusses how people deeply desire to feel significant. The author says this desire for importance is one of the main things that separates humans from animals. He gives several examples of famous and successful historical people who exhibited this intense drive to feel significant, such as Abraham Lincoln, Charles Dickens, and John D. Rockefeller. The author says how people satisfy their desire for importance determines their character. Someone like Rockefeller, who donated money to build hospitals, positively got his importance, whereas someone like John Dillinger, the bank robber, got his importance through negative actions that hurt people. The author gives amusing examples of the lengths some well-known people have gone to feel more important, such as insisting on impressive titles, naming locations after themselves, or pretending to be ill to gain attention and sympathy. In summary, the central message is that the desire for a feeling of significance and importance is a fundamental human drive, and how people significantly impact character and behavior. The passage describes a woman who went insane after facing failures and disappointments for an extended period. However, in her insanity she could find importance and gratification that she could not find in reality. Many people go insane due to a lack of appreciation and importance. Giving people honest appreciation and making them feel important can help prevent insanity. Charles Schwab was paid a very high salary because of his ability to motivate and encourage his employees through appreciation and praise. Criticism, on the other hand, kills motivation and ambition. Most people criticize rather than appreciate. Praise and appreciation lead to better work and more effort. John D. Rockefeller and Andrew Carnegie also succeeded by appreciating and praising their associates and assistants. Lack of appreciation is a significant reason people leave their spouses or jobs. Florence Ziegfeld gained success by making women feel beautiful through his praise and gallantry. He recognized the value of appreciation and confidence building. The author went without eating for 6 days but found that lack of appreciation and importance is more damaging than lack of food. People often deprive others of appreciation and praise, even though it is a basic human need. In summary, the key message is that sincere appreciation, praise and making people feel important are critical to success, motivation, happiness, and healthy relationships. On the other hand, a lack of appreciation can lead to resentment, demotivation, and even insanity. Giving honest appreciation is a habit that can transform lives and relationships. We should express honest and sincere appreciation for others. Flattery is insincere and will have a different impact. We should focus on the other person's wants and needs rather than our own. This is the best way to influence others. For example, if we want our kids not to smoke, explain how it will hurt their ability to play sports rather than lecturing them about what we want. Everything we do is motivated by wanting something, even unselfish acts. For example, we are donating to charity because we want to help others. To get what we want, we should think about what the other person wants. For example, to get a calf in the barn, think about what will motivate the calf rather than pushing or pulling. Offering a finger for the calf to suck on will make it want to go into the barn. People who can understand what others want and motivate them accordingly will be much more successful in working with others. Those who only focus on what they want will need help. The critical points in the summary are: you contributed because you wanted something in return, not just because you wanted to give. People's actions are motivated by what they desire. To persuade someone, arouse in them an eager want. Figure out what they desire and appeal to that. The secret of success in human relationships is seeing things from the other person's perspective, not just your own. Put yourself in their shoes. The letter example shows how not doing this comes across as self-centered and off-putting. The writer did not consider the reader's desires or perspective at all. Arguments often do not work because even if you convince someone, their pride may still make them resist changing their view. It is better to appeal to their interests and desires. The proper approach is to talk about what the other person wants and how they can get it, not what you want. This is demonstrated in the example of negotiating the speaker's rent down. People often ignore this simple principle and approach human relationships tactlessly and self-interestedly. However, considering the other side is critical. Those are the main takeaways from the summary on effectively persuading others and having good human relationships. The key is understanding people's desires and seeing their perspectives. Here is a summary of the key details. Focus on the recipient's needs and priorities, not your own. Frame your message around how you can help them with their problems or goals. Lead with the most relevant and essential information to the recipient. Mention benefits to them up front. Share information in a helpful spirit, not overly salty or self-serving manner. Aim to build goodwill and trust. Show enthusiasm and excitement for solving the other party's needs. Help them perceive the value. But be genuine. Provide details and concrete information, not just vague promises of how you can help. Give the recipient reason to believe in the value you claim to offer. Express a desire for a mutually beneficial relationship or solution. However, focus first on their interests, not what is in it for you. You will build more goodwill by leading with the other's wants. Follow through and deliver on promises and information offered. Do not just try to get applications or sales and then not fully educate the customer or client. Differentiate yourself by genuinely focusing on the other party's best interests. Most people are primed to be skeptical of those with a selfish or self-serving agenda. So the person who proves otherwise gains a strong competitive advantage. Stay updated with innovations and solutions so you have valuable information and options to offer others. However, educate yourself to serve others' needs, not just make sales. That covers some critical points that would be useful for an agency to keep in mind to build good relationships, trust, and intelligent booking of future opportunities or time. The overarching ideas come down to leading with a genuine focus on the other party's interests and priorities, while also being prepared and enthusiastic in offering real solutions and value. However, self-serving behavior should be avoided. Serving others has significant benefits with little competition. Understanding others and seeing their perspective leads to success. Looking at the other person's point of view and creating an eager want in them is not manipulation if both parties benefit. Examples showed how salespeople accomplish their goals by understanding the other's perspective and appealing to their interests. Most people need to understand how their minds work. One example showed how a student unsuccessfully tried to persuade others to play basketball by focusing on what he wanted instead of appealing to their interests. A father got his underweight son to eat by promising he would be big enough to stand up to a bully. He got his son to stop wetting the bed by having him pick out and buy his bed. Another father got his daughter to eat breakfast by letting her make it herself so she would be interested in eating it. People will be more interested in and receptive to ideas if they think the ideas are their own. The fundamental principles are: 1. Don't criticize, condemn or complain. 2. Give honest and sincere appreciation. 3. Arouse in the other person an eager want. 4. Make people like you by appealing to their interests and showing them liking in a genuine, unselfish manner like a dog. In summary, the fundamental techniques for handling people effectively are to avoid criticism, give genuine praise and create an eager want in the other person by appealing to their interests and showing them liking genuinely. Making others feel important and letting them feel ownership of ideas also helps win them over. Understanding how people's minds work and seeing their perspectives is critical to success in working with others. The author bought a puppy named Tippy for 50 cents. Tippy was the author's faithful companion for 5 years during his childhood. One night, Tippy was tragically killed by lightning while just 10 feet away from the author. Tippy's death was a sad event in the author's boyhood. The author then reflects on some life lessons that can be learned from Tippy. First, Tippy knew that showing genuine interest in others is how to make friends, not by trying to get others interested in yourself. People are primarily interested in themselves. Second, those who lack interest in others struggle the most in life and cause harm to others. Successful people are interested in others. The author illustrates these points with several examples. An editor said readers could tell if an author genuinely likes people by reading just a few paragraphs. Howard Thurston, a famous magician, credited his success to putting his personality across to audiences and taking a genuine interest in people. Uncle George found new purpose in retirement by developing an interest in other fiddlers and their lives. Theodore Roosevelt was well liked because he showed interest in everyone, even servants and laborers. A salesman retained an account by showing interest in clerks and the store owner. In summary, The key message is that showing genuine interest in others is the way to success and strong relationships. Lacking interest in others leads to struggle and causes harm. Stories of Tip A, Howard Thurston, Uncle George, Theodore Roosevelt, and the salesman all demonstrate the power of having a genuine interest in people. The author learned through experience that showing genuine interest in others effectively wins their cooperation and friendship. To illustrate this, the author described how he persuaded famous and busy people to speak to his students by expressing sincere interest in them and their work. The author suggested several ways to show interest in others: do things for others that require time, energy, unselfishness, and thoughtfulness. For example, the author habitually learned about friends' birthdays and sent greetings to make them feel remembered and valued. Greet people with enthusiasm and animation. Answer the phone in a tone that conveys pleasure in the caller. Developing a genuine interest in others wins friends and creates customer loyalty. The author gave an example of a bank customer who appreciated the teller's friendly concern during her mother's illness. Notice and remember personal details that others share to show you care. The author described how a man won over a reluctant executive by recalling his interest in collecting and bringing stamps for his son. Become genuinely interested in others' concerns and problems. An example was a salesman who struggled to sell to a chain store company for years. Only when he met with an executive and asked for help to argue against criticism of chain stores did he make progress. The executive then spent hours educating him and eventually offered him business. In summary, the author found that a genuine show of interest and caring for others is a simple but powerful way to make friends, gain cooperation and build goodwill. Sincere thoughtfulness and a desire to understand other people's needs and perspectives go a long way. A smile is powerful in creating an excellent first impression and influencing how others perceive you. Smiling at others makes them feel good and causes them to like you in return. A genuine smile comes from within, radiating warmth, sincerity, and kindness. An insincere smile, on the other hand, seems mechanical and off-putting. A genuine smile can have a significant positive impact in both your personal and professional life. Smiling has a positive effect on you as well as others. When you smile, your mood is elevated, and you tend to have more fun and passion in your endeavors. This makes you more likely to succeed and spreads that positive effect onto others. A simple smile and friendly greeting can have an unexpectedly powerful impact on those around you. Even unseen, such as over the phone, a smile can change the entire tone of interaction and bring more positivity and connection. By making an effort to smile more often in your daily interactions and relationships, especially with people closest to you, you can increase happiness, spread goodwill, resolve conflicts more efficiently, and gain tangible and intangible benefits. Overall, smiling more is a simple habit that pays enormous dividends. Jim Farley grew up in difficult circumstances after his father died when he was young. He had to start working at a brickyard to support his family. Despite his lack of education, he went into politics and eventually became the chairman of the Democratic National Committee and the Postmaster General of the United States. The secret to his success was his ability to remember and recall the names of thousands of people. He tried to learn people's full names, details about their families and opinions. This allowed him to make personal connections with many people. He used this ability to help Franklin Roosevelt win the presidency in 1932. Before the campaign, Farley spent months writing hundreds of letters to people across several states. He then traveled over 12,000 miles in 19 days to speak with people. His ability to know so many people on a personal level and win them over helped Roosevelt win the election. The key message is, if you want to win friends and influence people, try to remember and use people's names. Show them you care about them. Make real connections with others. That covers the main highlights and takeaways from the story and examples of Jim Farley. Let me know if you want me to explain any part of the summary in more detail. Jim Farley, a political leader, sent personal letters to thousands of people he had met, addressing each by name. He understood that people are most interested in their names. Forgetting or misspelling someone's name can offend them and put you at a disadvantage. Carnegie's success was mainly due to his ability to handle people and remember names. As a boy, Carnegie got neighborhood children to gather food for his rabbits by promising to name the rabbits after them. He later used similar tactics in business, naming a steel mill after a railroad executive to win his business. Carnegie merged his company with Pullman's by proposing to name the new company after Pullman. Pullman agreed. Remembering names and personal details helps leaders build connection and loyalty. Many executives and politicians use this tactic. People strive to perpetuate their names through donations, artistic patronage, and other means. They see it as a way to achieve immortality. Most people need more time and effort to remember names, though leaders like FDR demonstrated can be done. FDR impressed a Chrysler engineer by remembering his name, expressing interest in details, and complimenting his work. Though briefly introduced to an assistant, FDR also remembered his name and thanked him. This made a strong, memorable impression. The key message is that remembering names and personal details is a powerful way to win people over and leave a lasting impression. Those who can master this skill, as leaders like Carnegie and FDR did, gain a valuable advantage. Remembering names and making people feel important is crucial to gaining goodwill. Politicians know that recalling names is critical to success. Napoleon III was skilled at remembering names. He would ask for clarification if he didn't hear a name clearly and then repeat it during the conversation and write it down after to memorize it. Using people's names makes them feel unique and special. A GM employee got extra friendly service from a cafeteria worker by remembering and using her name. Many people want an interested listener. Carnegie found that people were happy to talk to him for hours because he was genuinely interested in learning from them. Listening is the secret to being an interesting conversationalist. Carnegie impressed a botanist by listening intently to him and expressing interest in learning more. Exclusive attention and focused listening are flattering and essential in business. A department store almost lost a customer because a clerk wouldn't listen to a complaint about damaged goods. The manager saved the sale by listening. Listening carefully to your friends and family shows you care. A mother knew her son felt loved because she would stop what she was doing to listen whenever he wanted to talk. Even angry people can be calmed by someone willing to listen to them. Listening can diffuse tension. In summary, listening well and remembering names are simple but powerful tools for building good relationships. They demonstrate interest, caring, and willingness to understand other people. Listening is one of the most essential skills for success in work and personal interactions. The author discusses the importance of being a patient, sympathetic listener to diffuse anger and frustration in others. People often want to feel heard and important. Examples: a telephone company's representative listened to an angry customer's complaint and raved for hours. By the fourth meeting, the customer had calmed down, paid his bills, and withdrew his complaints. He just needed to feel heard. A woolen company's owner listened patiently to an angry customer refusing to pay a bill and threatening never to shop there again. The owner thanked him for the feedback, wiped away the charges, and recommended other stores. The customer ended up placing his most significant order ever and remaining a loyal customer for decades. Edward Bach, a poor immigrant boy, wrote letters to famous people asking about their lives. He visited them, listened to them, and learned from them. This experience and confidence gained from listening helped launch his successful magazine career. Isaac Marcoson said that many people fail to make a good impression because they do not listen. Important people prefer good listeners. People often want an audience. Lincoln talked for hours to an old friend to clarify his own mind about issuing the Emancipation Proclamation. He just needed a sympathetic listener to unburden himself. Sigmund Freud was an excellent listener. His patient, concentrated attention and appreciation of what people said were extraordinary, even poorly said. People felt heard. If you want people to shun and despise you, never listen to anyone, constantly talk about yourself, and interrupt others. These people are bores intoxicated with their own egos. In summary, listening patiently and sympathizing with others, especially angry or frustrated people, can have enormous benefits. People often just want to feel heard and important. Good listening skills can resolve conflicts, gain loyal customers, help relationships, and advance your knowledge and success. However, constantly talking about yourself and interrupting others will only make people avoid and disrespect you. To make people like you instantly, pay them a sincere compliment. People are hungry for praise and appreciation. So look for something you genuinely admire in others and speak of it. Make your compliments heartfelt and honest. People can sense when you are being insincere. If we try to compliment others, it makes a huge difference in our relationships and how others perceive us. Look for opportunities to lift people through praise and admiration. The critical points in the passage are: the author told an anecdote about complimenting a man's hair to illustrate the importance of making others feel important through sincere appreciation and praise. The deepest human desire is to feel important and appreciated. Historically, philosophers and religious leaders have taught the golden rule of treating others how you wish to be treated. There are small everyday ways to make others feel important, such as using courteous phrases like please, thank you, and excuse me. These small gestures can have a significant impact. Sincere appreciation and praise can have a life-changing effect, as illustrated by the stories of Hall Caine and the shy student Chris. Making others feel important satisfies their profound needs and brings the giver and receiver happiness. The attorney in the story illustrates how applying the principle of appreciation and praise can be useful in business and professional settings. By sincerely complimenting the old aunt's house, he gained her trust and learned more about her motivations and values. Most people feel superior to others in some way. Recognizing others' importance and superiority in some aspects is a way to win them over, as advised by Emerson. However, some people exhibit an exaggerated sense of superiority and importance condescendingly. The overall message is that we should spread happiness by making others feel important through sincere appreciation and praise. This satisfies human needs and leads to healthy relationships and success. An old lady showed a visitor, Mr. R., around her house and her collection of treasures from her travels. She had priceless items like silk draperies, paintings, china, etc. She then showed him her late husband's vintage Packard car which she has not used since he passed away. She offered to give him the car as he appreciated beautiful things. He refused to accept such a valuable gift from her. However, she insisted, saying she did not want to sell it or give it to her relatives waiting for her to die to get the car. She wanted someone who appreciated it to have it. Unable to refuse without hurting her, he accepted. The lady was lonely and craving warmth and appreciation when she found that in the visitor. She expressed her gratitude through the lavish gift of the car. Another story illustrates how admiring someone's hobby or achievement can win them over. A nursery superintendent complimented a judge's dogs and won a $100 free puppy. Even famous and accomplished people like George Eastman, the inventor of Kodak film, craved appreciation and recognition. A salesman won a big order from Eastman by admiring his office and listening with interest as Eastman talked about his life, work and ideals. A restaurant owner saved a key employee from resigning by expressing her importance to him and his business in front of others. Repeating your appreciation and confidence in someone can make them even more loyal. The key lesson is to make other people feel important by talking to them about themselves and expressing genuine appreciation and admiration for them and their interests or achievements. This will make them like you and willing to do things for you. You cannot win an argument. Even if you win, the other person will likely resent you and remain unconvinced. Avoid arguments whenever possible. Avoid telling someone they are wrong. It will likely only make them defensive and damage your relationship. Instead, listen to them and seek to understand their perspective. Then share your differing perspective without judgment. Admit when the other person makes a good point. Say something like, "You make a fair point there." This makes them more open to listening to you. Focus on one issue at a time. Do not bring in tangential points or accusations. Stick to the critical issue under discussion. Look for compromise and common ground. Be willing to yield on less important points. Look for solutions that satisfy both parties. Stay calm and courteous. Do not get emotional or attack the other person. This will likely only escalate the conflict and cause irreparable damage. Remain respectful. Seek first to understand. Ensure you comprehend the other person's concerns and interests before sharing your perspective. Moreover, please share your message in a way that addresses their interests and critical concerns. Agree to disagree if needed. Some arguments cannot be resolved. Be mature to accept this and move forward in a spirit of goodwill. Your relationship is more important than any one disagreement. Look for a win-win. The ideal outcome is one in which both parties feel their fundamental interests and concerns have been satisfied. Get creative in looking for a solution that benefits everyone. Distrust your first instinctive reaction in a disagreement. Our first reaction is often defensive. Stay calm and be open-minded. Control your temper. React in a measured, thoughtful way. Aggression often escalates conflict. Listen first to understand other perspectives. Do not debate or resist. Seek to understand. Look for areas of agreement and common ground. Focus on where you agree, not where you differ. Be honest and admit when you are wrong. Apologize for mistakes. It can help resolve conflicts. Promise to consider other views carefully. Keep an open mind. The other person may be partly or wholly right. Thank others for their input. Even those who disagree with you often want the same outcome. Try to see them as allies. Postpone action to allow tempers to cool and new solutions to emerge. New ideas often arise from a cooling-off period. Consider whether the other person might be right or partly proper. Question your assumptions and reactions. Avoid telling people they are wrong. It elicits defensiveness and hurts feelings. Make people want to agree rather than forcing them to. Say you may be wrong and want to examine the facts. It disarms others and makes them more open to your views too. People prefer to agree than prove each other wrong. Admitting you may be wrong never gets you into trouble, but telling others they are wrong often does. It pays to be diplomatic and bring out the best in people. Most people are biased and reluctant to change their minds. Telling them they are wrong usually makes them defensive and hardens their views. It is better to make them want to agree. The desire to be right is less about facts than about self-esteem. My opinions feel like an extension of self, so we get emotional when they are challenged. It is a psychological truth that applies to all of us. We tend to seek evidence that confirms what we already believe and ignore evidence that contradicts it. Our reasoning is often just rationalizing what we want to be true. Here is a summary of the key ideas from the passage. Our first reaction to others' statements is often judgment rather than understanding. We must make an effort to understand others rather than evaluate them. People do not like to be told uncomfortable truths, especially in a forceful manner. Tact and gentleness are required. Ridicule, abuse, and confrontation do not change people's minds and only cause resentment. A cooperative, empathetic approach is more effective. Ben Franklin conquered his habit of argument and opinionated speech by avoiding direct contradiction with others, using dogmatic language, and forceful assertions of his views. Instead, he expressed opinions tentatively and found common ground. This made him much more persuasive. The same principles apply in business. Bluntly confronting others and telling them they are wrong strips them of dignity and is counterproductive. Exploring others' perspectives, asking questions, making suggestions rather than outright contradictions, and framing one's perspective tentatively lead to better outcomes. An example is given of successfully applying this approach to resolve a dispute over an unsatisfactory lumber delivery. Rather than arguing, the salesman reviewed the situation objectively, asked questions, and tentatively and cooperatively explored options with the dissatisfied customer to find a solution. In summary, the key to persuading others and resolving disputes is empathy, understanding others' perspectives, collaborating cooperatively rather than confronting aggressively, finding common ground, expressing opinions tentatively, asking questions, and making suggestive rather than argumentative statements. This approach achieves better results in both personal relationships and business. The author argues that it is best to admit your mistakes openly and quickly. He shares two examples to illustrate this principle. When walking his dog Rex in the park against the rules, he readily admitted his wrongdoing when confronted by a police officer. By condemning himself before the officer could, he gained the officer's goodwill and only received a warning. Had he argued, he likely would have been fined. An artist, Ferdinand E. Warren, used self-criticism to win over an irritable client. When called into the office, Warren immediately took blame for his mistakes before the client could attack him. This disarmed the client, who became forgiving and even gave Warren more work. The author concludes that self-criticism avoids feelings of guilt, clears the air, solves problems, and earns the goodwill of others. It is always best to admit your mistakes openly and quickly. An executive named Bruce Harvey provides an example, admitting to improperly authorizing paid sick leave. By voluntarily bringing this error to the attention of his company president, Harvey's integrity was reinforced rather than questioned. In summary, when you make a mistake, admit it openly and voluntarily at the first opportunity. Do not make excuses or argue, be honest and criticize yourself before others do. People will respect such integrity and good faith. Harvey made a mistake that cost his employee and apologized to his boss, taking full responsibility. His boss initially blamed other departments, but Harvey repeatedly said it was his fault. Finally, his boss accepted this and told him to fix the issue. Harvey felt good about handling this well and his boss respected him more after this. The story shows that admitting mistakes takes courage but raises esteem in others. For example, Robert E. Lee took full blame for the failure of Pickett's charge in the Battle of Gettysburg during the Civil War. Though there were many possible excuses, Lee said, "All this has been my fault." This showed his noble character. A Chinese student had been estranged from his son for years due to the father's past opium addiction. Chinese tradition said the son should reconcile first. However, the father first apologized, admitting he was wrong to his son. His son forgave him and they rebuilt their relationship. Again, admitting one's mistakes led to a good outcome. Elbert Hubbard, an author, often disarmed angry readers by agreeing with their criticisms of his work. He would invite them to visit and discuss further. This gentle, tactful approach led to good results and turned enemies into friends. The fundamental principle is, if you are wrong, admit it quickly and emphatically. Do not attack the other person if you are at fault. Admit your mistakes with enthusiasm and you'll achieve surprising results. It is also more satisfying than trying to defend yourself when wrong. An example is John D. Rockefeller Jr.'s handling of a violent strike against his Colorado Fuel and Iron Company. At a time of much hatred, Rockefeller addressed the strikers with a friendly speech that acknowledged some fault, presented facts, and resolved the issue without further conflict, winning over many former critics. The friendly, gracious approach was enormously influential. Rockefeller gave a speech to address medical missionaries. He used amicable and complimentary language to win over his audience, calling them friends and speaking of their mutual friendship and common interests. Had Rockefeller been confrontational or argumentative, it would have angered the audience and been counterproductive. Friendliness is more persuasive than confrontation. Examples of Lincoln, Webster, and others show that a friendly approach and compliments help win people over to your side in a dispute. Friendliness begets friendliness. An engineer, O.L. Straub, used a friendly approach to get his landlord to reduce his rent. By complimenting the landlord and emphasizing their good relationship, he got the landlord to open up about his troubles with other tenants. The landlord then offered to reduce Straub's rent. Dean Woodcock of an electric company used a friendly approach with a photographer taking pictures of what looked like wasteful overstaffing of a job. By explaining the situation, Woodcock gained the photographer's understanding and sympathy. Gerald Wynn reported using a friendly approach to get compensation for flood damage to his new home. Rather than threatening legal action over the neglected storm drain, he called the owner directly using a friendly, courteous tone. His reasonable request was granted, avoiding legal hassles. The examples show how a friendly, complimentary manner and a soft-spoken, quiet, friendly approach can win over adversaries and resolve disputes much more effectively than confrontation or argument. Friendliness begets friendliness, even from initially hard-boiled individuals. With courteous explanation, even mistakes and offenses can be forgiven. The key points from the passage are: begin discussions by emphasizing areas of agreement, not disagreement. Keep getting the other person to say yes. This makes them more open to your ideas. Saying no causes a psychological resistance and rejection. It is hard to change someone's mind after they have said no. A salesman was trying to sell motors to a customer for 13 years. He finally got an order, but the customer complained that the motors were running too hot. Rather than argue, the salesman agreed and asked questions to get the customer saying yes. He found that the temperature was actually within proper standards. By using this positive approach, he addressed the customer's concern and made the sale. The yes technique can be very effective in persuading others and gaining their willingness to listen. Start by establishing areas of agreement and then guide them to new conclusions. In summary, the fundamental principles are to begin in a friendly, agreeable manner rather than provoking disagreement and opposition. A positive, yes-oriented approach will likely lead to a successful outcome. The fundamental principle here is to let the other person do most of the talking. This does several things. It allows them to express their thoughts and ideas thoroughly. This makes them feel heard and understood. It gives you valuable information to help assess their concerns and needs. The more they talk, the more information you gain. It makes a good impression. People appreciate the opportunity to share their experiences, thoughts, and feelings. Some examples that illustrate this principle: a salesperson lost his voice and ended up winning a significant contract by letting the clients do the talking in the meeting. By nodding and smiling, he made them feel heard. A mother's relationship with her teenage daughter improved after she started listening to her daughter instead of constantly lecturing her. She gained insight into the underlying issues by allowing her daughter to open up. A job candidate impressed his prospective employer by demonstrating his knowledge of the company's history and struggles. The employer ended up talking at length about the company's early days. A brokerage firm hired a candidate after he listened with interest as the firm's owner talked about the difficulties of the business. The candidate made the business owner feel heard and understood. The key lesson is that people appreciate the opportunity to share their thoughts. Let others talk themselves out, and they will usually like and respect you for it. Asking questions and listening sincerely are the most potent tools for influencing others. The placement counselor Henrietta could have been better liked by her colleagues initially because she always boasted about her accomplishments. However, they became her friends when she started listening to her colleagues and encouraging them to share their achievements. People prefer to discover ideas themselves rather than having them forced upon them. Adolf Seltz, an automobile sales manager, asked his discouraged sales team what they expected from him and what he could expect from them. This made them feel consulted and increased their motivation and sales. Similarly, Eugene Wesson, who sold designs to stylists, only sold to one buyer briefly. When he asked the buyer for suggestions, he felt involved in the creative process and bought the designs. Paul Davis used the same principle with his family. Rather than forcing his vacation choice on them, he asked for their input. His wife and daughter then proposed his preferred option, feeling the choice was theirs. An X-ray equipment manufacturer sent a letter to a hospital director asking for advice on improving their machines. This made the director feel essential and led to a sale. Colonel Edward House, an advisor to President Wilson, planted ideas in Wilson's mind subtly so Wilson would think they were his own. This was very influential. In summary, People are more motivated and receptive to ideas when they feel involved in developing them. Letting others do much of the talking and make discoveries themselves leads to the most cooperation and persuasion. The key ideas are: try to understand other people's perspectives. Put yourself in their shoes and try to see why they think and act as they do. This can provide insight into their motivations and actions. People are always focused on their interests and concerns. However, try to show interest and concern for other people's perspectives. This can help build rapport and cooperation. Criticizing and confronting people often leads to resentment and resistance. It is better to be sympathetic while trying to steer people in the desired direction. Provide empathy before trying to change someone's views or behavior. Looking at situations from multiple perspectives can help reduce tensions and conflict. Try to understand other points of view rather than attacking others or becoming defensive. There may be more to the situation than is immediately apparent. Complimenting and showing appreciation for others can motivate them to be more helpful and cooperative. People respond better when they feel their efforts are valued and recognized. In summary, the key message is that gaining insight into other people's perspectives, showing an interest in their concerns, and providing empathy and appreciation are effective ways to motivate cooperation and handle difficult situations. A confrontational approach often backfires, while a more understanding perspective produces better results. The author received a scathing letter from a woman who was upset that he incorrectly said Louisa May Alcott was from New Hampshire instead of Massachusetts. Instead of responding angrily, the author called the woman, apologized, and expressed sympathy for her point of view. By doing this, he was able to turn her hostility into friendliness. The author argues that sympathizing with others and seeing their perspectives can help resolve conflicts and create goodwill. For example, President Taft describes receiving a letter from an angry woman whose son he did not appoint to a position she wanted. Instead of responding harshly, Taft wrote a polite letter expressing understanding of her disappointment. This mollified the woman's anger. The key message is that trying to see the other person's point of view and sympathizing with them can be a practical approach to resolving disputes and diffusing tensions. Looking at situations from multiple perspectives helps facilitate understanding and cooperation. Saul Hurok handled many famous artists over decades. He learned that to manage temperamental stars, one needed sympathy, and more sympathy. For example, the famous bass singer Fyodor Shaliapin often complained that he was sick and could not perform. However, Hurok learned that appeasing him with sympathy and offers to cancel the show would eventually convince Shaliapin to sing. The author cites a psychologist who says that people universally crave sympathy. They display injuries, share details of illnesses and operations, engage in self-pity to get sympathy from others, to influence people and appeal to their nobler motives and ideals. For example, instead of telling a disgruntled tenant to honor his lease, a landlord appealed to the tenant's ideal of being a man of his word. The tactic worked. Other examples: Lord Northcliffe appealed to the ideal of respecting motherhood instead of directly asking a newspaper not to print an unflattering photo. Rockefeller appealed to the desire not to harm children instead of directly asking photographers not to take pictures of his children. In summary, it appeals to people's noblest motives and ideals to change their minds or behavior. Dramatization is an effective way to garner attention and get your point across. Simply stating the facts is not enough. You have to make the truth vivid, engaging, and dramatic. The media uses dramatization all the time. Movies, TV shows, commercials, etc. They understand the power of dramatization to capture attention and persuade people. It would help if you used similar techniques. Dramatization works for businesses, in sales, at home, with children, and in all areas of life. Some examples given: a newspaper publishes a book containing all its content from one day to dramatize how much news and content it provides readers. A rat poison company used live rats in a window display, increasing sales fivefold. TV commercials use dramatic techniques like showing how one product is superior to another. A salesperson threw pennies on the floor to get a grocer's attention about how much money he was losing with old cash registers. Proposing on one knee or creating a romantic setting dramatizes the proposal. A father made cleaning up into a fun game with an imaginary train to get his kids to pick up their toys. A woman finally got in to see her boss by bringing coffee and donuts when his secretary wasn't looking, dramatizing her persistence and getting his attention. The key is to be vivid, catch interest, and impress the importance of your message on your audience through showmanship and dramatic techniques. Make the truth come alive. To change people's behavior without arousing resentment, start by sincerely complimenting them. Then gently point out their mistakes. This approach makes people more receptive to criticism because it starts by building them up instead of tearing them down. People are more likely to accept criticism if you sincerely compliment them. So sandwich the criticism between two compliments. For example, compliment, "You did a great job organizing this event." Criticism, "I noticed a few typos in the flyer though. Please double check next time." Compliment, "But overall, you should be proud. Great job." This compliment-criticism compliment approach softens the blow and makes people more receptive to your feedback. However, the compliments must be sincere, not just flatter people to manipulate them. Genuine compliments build people up and make them more open to improvement. In summary, people are more likely to accept criticism if you sincerely compliment them. Compliment them, gently pointing out their mistakes, and end with another compliment. This approach makes people receptive instead of resentful. However, the compliments must be genuine. To summarize, the key idea is to begin with praise or appreciation before criticizing someone or pointing out their faults. Some examples: McKinley praised the writer's speech before suggesting changes to make it more suitable for the occasion. He did not offend the man by starting with praise or hurting his feelings. Lincoln began his letter to General Hooker by expressing confidence in him and praising some of his qualities before criticizing his ambition and warning him against rashness. W.P. Gaw won over the subcontractor by praising him, his company and his products before discussing the issue of delayed delivery. By showering him with compliments, he got the man into a good mood and gained his cooperation. Dorothy Wroblewski praised the new teller for her customer service skills before addressing her difficulty balancing the cash drawer. With encouragement and guidance, the teller was able to improve in that area as well. Charles Schwab did not openly criticize its employees for smoking in a non-smoking area. Instead, he gave them cigars and subtly hinted that they smoke outside without scolding them. They respected him for his considerate way of handling the situation. In summary, criticism is more effective when preceded by praise. People are more receptive when their egos are boosted first. A little praise and encouragement can make the difference between resentment and cooperation. Begin in a friendly, courteous manner and the other person will not feel offended or become defensive. Talk about your own mistakes first before criticizing others. Admit that you have made similar mistakes. This makes the other person more receptive to your criticism. Dale Carnegie wanted to criticize his niece Josephine for mistakes she made. However, he realized he made many mistakes at her age too. So when he criticized her, he first admitted he had made similar mistakes and had poor judgment when he was young. This made Josephine more open to his feedback. An engineer's secretary was making many spelling mistakes. Rather than pointing out her errors, he told her he also struggled with spelling. He showed her his notebook of words he had trouble with. This made her realize everyone struggles with spelling, and she became much more careful afterward. The German Emperor Wilhelm II made offensive public statements during a visit to England. His chancellor knew Wilhelm was arrogant and would not take direct criticism well. So when talking to Wilhelm, he first humbled himself and took the blame for the Kaiser's blunders. This approach would make the Kaiser reflect and change his ways. The fundamental principle is to talk about your mistakes humbly and empathetically before criticizing the other person. This makes them more open to accepting your feedback and criticism. Direct criticism often makes people defensive and resentful. Here is a summary of the passage. The Kaiser Wilhelm gave an outrageous interview to the Daily Telegraph where he made absurd claims and statements. This caused embarrassment for the German government and fury across Europe. The Kaiser then wanted his chancellor, Prince von Bülow, to take the blame. Von Bülow refused, realizing it would be unbelievable for him to take responsibility for the Kaiser's words. However, von Bülow was then able to appease the Kaiser and win back his favor. He did this by admitting his ignorance and limitations and praising the Kaiser's superior knowledge and abilities. With the Kaiser's ego stroked, his anger at von Bülow dissipated. This story illustrates how admitting your mistakes and weaknesses while praising the other person can work wonders in softening their hostility and gaining goodwill. Several other examples reinforce humility and praise's effectiveness for positive influence and cooperation. A good leader will recognize that direct orders can breed resentment, even when correcting obvious mistakes. Suggesting and asking questions is better, allowing others to feel involved in and committed to decisions and solutions. This approach fosters willing cooperation rather than defiance or rebellion. The key message in this section is that praise and encouragement are much more effective for motivating people and spurring them on to success than criticism. Several examples are given to illustrate this. Animal trainers have known for centuries that praising and rewarding even the slightest improvement in an animal's behavior is the best way to train it. We should apply the same approach to people. The psychologist Jess Lair said, "Praise is like sunlight to the warm human spirit. We cannot flower and grow without it." However, while most of us are only too ready to apply the cold wind of criticism to others, we are somehow reluctant to give our fellow the warm sunshine of praise. Enrico Caruso's mother praised him and encouraged his singing even when his teacher said he had no talent. Her praise spurred him on to become the most famous opera singer of his time. Charles Dickens received encouragement after his first story was published, even though he was not paid. This praise changed his life and led to his successful career as an author. H.G. Wells was working as a clerk and threatened to kill himself until his old schoolmaster praised him and gave him a job as a teacher. This praise altered the course of his life. B.F. Skinner showed through experiments that minimizing criticism and emphasizing praise reinforces good behavior and causes poorer behavior to fade. John Ringel's Pa improved his family dynamic by resolving to praise his children instead of constantly yelling at them. Praise led to better behavior and improved relationships. In summary, the power of praise and encouragement is demonstrated through many examples and in the advice of psychologists. Criticism tends to discourage and demotivate, while praise spurs people on to success. The key message in this chapter is that giving people a positive reputation to live up to can inspire them and change their behavior for the better. Several examples are provided to illustrate this. A service manager talked with a mechanic whose work had declined. He praised the mechanic's abilities and past exemplary work, and expressed confidence that he could improve. The mechanic then worked hard to live up to this positive reputation and became a fast and thorough worker again. A writer told a humble servant girl she had hidden treasures within her. Believing this, the girl began taking better care of herself, grew more confident, and eventually married. The writer's kind words had given her a positive reputation to aspire to, transforming her life. A salesman returned to a store owner who had rejected his product and appealed to the owner's reputation for being open-minded. The owner then gave him another hearing. A dentist wrote a note to his cleaning lady praising her excellent work and giving her permission to work an extra half-hour to polish things like the cup holders. When the dentist arrived the next day, the cup holders and other areas were polished to a mere shine. The positive reputation inspired the cleaning lady to do outstanding work. In summary, giving someone a positive reputation to live up to through praise, expressing belief in their abilities and character, and conveying confidence in them can motivate them to achieve more and become better at what they do. This is a simple technique that can produce powerful results. Here is a summary of the key points. Woodrow Wilson wanted to send a personal emissary to Europe to try and negotiate peace during World War I. William Jennings Bryan, the Secretary of State, wanted to go as he saw it as an opportunity to achieve peace and gain personal glory. However, Wilson appointed Colonel Edward M. House instead. House was Wilson's close advisor and confidant. House was delighted with the appointment and saw it as an opportunity to serve his country and gain prestige. He was motivated to succeed in order to please Wilson, gain fame, and serve humanity. House was very industrious and worked hard to understand the perspectives and priorities of all parties. He built personal connections and appealed to people's motivations and interests. His efforts led to peace talks between the warring sides. Although complete peace was not achieved, House's work was instrumental in limiting the scope of the war. House succeeded by making people glad to do what he wanted. He understood their motivations and framed his requests in a way that made them seem appealing and in people's self-interest to agree. In summary, the key lesson is that making people glad to do what you want requires understanding their motivations and priorities, framing your requests to appeal to their interests, and making the agreement seem personally satisfying or advantageous. House demonstrated this through his efforts as Wilson's emissary during World War I. Does this help summarize the key highlights and main takeaway from the story? Let me know if you want me to clarify or expand on any summary part. Colonel Edward M. House was President Woodrow Wilson's friend and advisor. House had the difficult task of telling William Jennings Bryan that Wilson had yet to choose Bryan to be his emissary to Europe to negotiate peace after World War I. House tried to make Bryan feel he was too important for the job to avoid offending him. House was adept at human relations and knew that making people feel good about doing what they wanted was important. Wilson also employed this tactic when asking William McAdoo to join his cabinet as Treasury Secretary. Wilson made McAdoo feel like he would be doing Wilson a favor by accepting. Unfortunately, Wilson did not always use good human relations skills. He offended Republicans by not including them in the Treaty of Versailles negotiations. His poor handling of the situation hampered U.S. participation in the League of Nations and damaged his health and career. Using the make a person happy to do things you want them to do approach works for leaders and parents. Some examples include offering incentives and giving titles and authority to encourage behavior change. Guidelines for effective leadership and attitude change. Be sincere. Know precisely what you want the other person to do. Be empathetic. Understand the other person's wants and needs. Match your requested action to benefits for the other person. Frame your request around those benefits to make the action appealing. You may only get the desired response sometimes, but you will be more successful using these principles. Even a slight increase in success makes you a more effective leader. People are more likely to do what you want when you make them happy to do it. The setting is in the 1930s during the Great Depression in New York City. Despite 20% unemployment, 2,500 people attended a course on public speaking and influencing others, showing a hunger to improve themselves. The attendees were mainly business executives, employers, and professionals, showing that the course appealed to the upper class. They were looking to gain practical skills for their jobs and lives, wanting something other than theory. Surveys at the time showed adults primarily wanted to learn about health and interpersonal relationships. However, manuals were absent from teaching interpersonal skills, so the course promised to fill this gap. The course moved quickly, with 18 students giving 75-second speeches to demonstrate what they learned. The students had a range of backgrounds, showing broad appeal. Some examples: Patrick O'Hare, an Irish immigrant with little education, overcame severe anxiety about public speaking and got a promotion at work. Godfrey Meyer, a banker, became a town councilman after taking the course and learning to express his views publicly. The head of a food industry association got his organization's presidency and lots of publicity after improving his speaking. The ability to speak well and influence others was seen as a shortcut to success and distinction. The course promised to give people skills disproportionate to their inherent talents. Dale Carnegie himself had critiqued over 150,000 speeches, showing his experience. The course aimed to tap into people's desire for self-improvement and teach them practical skills to thrive during difficult times. In summary, if all the people who had spoken before Dale Carnegie had used only 3 minutes and appeared before him in succession, it would have taken 10 months to hear them all, listening day and night. Despite humble beginnings, adversity, and repeated setbacks and failures, Carnegie went on to achieve remarkable success by developing a unique approach to teaching communication and interpersonal skills that blended public speaking, salesmanship, and applied psychology. Dale Carnegie developed popular courses on public speaking, interpersonal skills, and sales without adhering to strict rules. His courses were very engaging and impactful. His courses inspired students and led to the formation of student clubs that met regularly for years. Students were highly dedicated, with some traveling long distances to attend. Carnegie believed most people only achieve a fraction of their potential. His courses aimed to help people develop their latent abilities. The courses covered public speaking, human relations, sales, and management. They focused on confidence building, communication, positive thinking, and productivity. Besides the courses, Carnegie wrote books on reducing worry, living well, and leadership. The courses and books were top-rated and impactful, helping many people enhance their lives and careers. Book link click here.